After the crushing disappointment of relegation from League One on the final day of last season, the Gills and their fans went into the summer in need of a boost. They got it with the return of a legend. Andy Hessenthaler came back as manager in May to begin the task of rebuilding. This was the man who'd been voted the greatest Gillingham player of all time and who'd spent more than 4 seasons in charge when the club was in the Championship. The scenario now was very different. Leading scorer Simeon Jackson had left and money was tight. But as Hess strode up the touchline towards the dugout ahead of that first game against Cheltenham, he received a rapturous welcome from the fans. And there was a real optimism in the August sunshine that this could be the start of another successful era. Well, Andy, after all you'd achieved in your first spell at Gillingham as manager, was it a big decision to return?
Not really. I mean, chairman approached me. It didn't take me long to make a decision because you know, I did feel as if perhaps there was some unfinished business here when I did leave, and to have the opportunity to come back, you know, I jumped at that, and it was great to speak to the chairman, and it's been great to come back. Through
that summer, I needed someone who I knew could come back here and really love the club, who really had a passion for the club, who had learnt his trade in management, and Hesse ticked the boxes all the way down the line, really. So I was quite confident that he would give the club everything it needed, and give the team everything it needed, which, you know, fortunately has happened so far.
And to be fair, he's had to work very hard, hasn't he, because of the way this whole season has unfolded?
Yeah, I mean, we had a disastrous start, but, you know, Hesse kept working and the boys kept working, to be honest. They got behind him. He had to sort a few issues out, which didn't take him too long.
Well, that's right. It was the 6th game of the season in the league before you got that first win here against Shrewsbury. That must have been a weight off your mind.
Yeah, it was, because the longer it goes on, it's tough, and you get frustrated as a manager and your coaching staff, along with the players and along with the fans, because they're desperate for you to do well here. And you know, it was a slow start, a few draws in there, and you know, I remember the Shrewsbury game. It was a tremendous performance, and that got us up and running. So, you know, we needed to get that win, and like I say, it was about settling everybody down then.
Obviously, the previous season when you weren't here, Gillingham hadn't managed to win away, and it seemed to be almost psychologically a bit of a barrier for the players trying to get that first away win. Were you conscious of that in the opening weeks of the season?
I think you are, and it's in the back of your mind all the time. I think we, like I said, we needed to get that monkey off our back, and it was difficult, and we was going away from home, and it carried on, and we was finding it hard to get that win, and you know, but we had to stay positive, stay together, and we knew that it would come, because we've got a good, you know, good bunch of players at the football club, and you know, there was a good atmosphere in the dressing room. We just needed to get that win, and you know, I think we would go on from there, and finally we did do that.
Well, it was amazing, wasn't it, the transformation? I mean, let's talk about that Oxford game to start with. Cody McDonald got the only goal, but I mean, it was a good performance all round, wasn't it? And I suppose it was great that you also had quite a few hundred fans there to see it.
Yeah, the fans were phenomenal that day, I've got to say. You know, like they are all the time on their travels, and you know, I remember the game. It was one that we went there. We was positive. You know, again, leading up to it, we had injuries, so we had to pick a team. We was able to bring a couple of players in on loan, Charlie Lee and Chris Welpdale from Peterborough, and made an instant impact, to be fair to them, and it freshened things up, and it was a tremendous performance.
Followed it up with another win 3 days later at Barnet, which, if the players were in any doubt as to whether they could win away, then surely that was put to bed once and for all.
Well, we had three straight away wins. I think we went to Macclesfield then as well, if I remember rightly. But after the Dover game, you know, I had about an hour and a half with the players in the dressing room, and we had a good chat, and you know, a lot of things were said, and you know, I think a lot of soul searching was done, and it was a real pleasure to have been in that meeting. I think if I look back over the whole year, that 1.5 hours that we all spent together locked in the dressing room was probably the most important 1.5 hours of the season, because it wasn't an argument, it wasn't a chucking things around, there were no teapots being thrown. It was just a good, honest look at ourselves and a good discussion between the players. You know, we followed it up by they asked me to go training on the Monday, which was a bit of a struggle, but obviously I showed my quality, and in the freezing cold. And then we went for Italian and played some badminton down at Larkfield, and it was good. The boys were really on fire, and I think that would have been the turning point of the season, I think.
Well, the run was starting to unfold. I mean, another game, for example, here just after Christmas against Port Vale. You won 3-0. We saw 2 goals from Cody MacDonald. He was just starting to get into a role by that stage, wasn't he?
Yeah, because we didn't have him at the start of the season, Cody, and you know, we knew what it was all about. We brought him in. Obviously, it was part of the deal when Simeon Jackson went to Norwich. He came to us on loan, and unfortunately for him at the start, it was, you know, he had a few injuries pre-season, and you know, we just started to get him going, and I've got to say he's been phenomenal. I mean, bearing in mind that he hasn't been in the league that long. They took him, Norwich took him out of non-league football, playing for Dartford. He'd gone to Norwich, been sort of on the bench a few times coming on, and so this is his real first full season.
As soon as I mentioned to Hess when the Simeon deal looked like it wasn't one I could stop, was going on, Hess immediately wanted Cody. He'd watched Cody before, he knew of Cody. And it was a no-brainer, really. And you know, he said, "Chairman, if you can get Cody as part of the deal, let's do it." And he's come in and done remarkably well. He's a great lad to have around the dressing room. I mean, we love him at the club. You know, he loves the club. We'd love to keep him. That's not necessarily in our control. And if we don't manage to keep him and he goes on and does well, we'll always look back and thank him for what he's done during his time here.
It's been good, to be fair. You know, obviously we had a sticky start to the season, early doors, but we sort of put it right, and we've had a good second half of the season since Christmas.
And talk about your partnership with the big man Adebayo Akinfenwa. That seems to have been really effective this season.
Yeah, it's been brilliant. You know, he's been great for me on and off the pitch. You know, around the changing rooms and that, he's just fantastic. He'll sort of take me aside and just help me with things, because obviously I'm sort of new into the game, as you say. Although I'm not young anymore, you know, but he helps me out a lot on and off the pitch, and he's brilliant to play up front with, because he, you know, the ball sticks to him and he'll knock things on for me to get on the end of.
You know, when we brought him in the summer, you do your homework on players. I spoke to Kenny Jackett, who knew him very well, and it was a fantastic reference. And I've got to say, Kenny was absolutely spot on about the lad. He's been first class. You know, he wants to score goals. You know, and he scored quite a few this season. But I've got to say, he's been sort of the catalyst, and I'm sure Cody will tell you that he's done a lot of the hard work for a lot of Cody's goals, and the boys love him. He's been phenomenal, and I say a gentleman to work with.
Let's talk about some of the players that were new for this year. Well, I say new. Danny Spiller, of course, a familiar face from the past, but he'd been away for 3 years. What kind of impact do you feel he's had this season on his return?
Well, he's a live wire, Spills, and he's a nice lad to have around the place. There's not a bad bone in Spills' body, really. He's like one of the old boys that went away and got a little bit lost in 2 or 3 different clubs, and has come back to what he would say is his spiritual home.
I had a bit of a tough time when I did leave Gillingham in the first place, and felt like I'd arrived home.
With Andy Hessenthaler being here, who you'd played with, of course, in the Championship before, I mean, presumably that helped.
Yeah, definitely. The gaffer knew all about me, which was fortunate, and it was just a matter of coming back and I think proving my fitness and working hard, and like I say, it's just a pleasure to be back and playing good football again.
You know, I've got to say, he's made a big impact this season, and I think he loves the club. You know, he gets on very well with the fans, and you know what you get from Danny. You know, week in, week out, he'll go out there and work his socks off.
How much pleasure have you taken in seeing the likes of Jack Payne and Luke Rooney continue to develop?
Well, I mean, they're both 2 good lads again, 2 very different lads insofar as the way they play. But Jack, from last season when he started playing, I think was like an old head on young shoulders, really. I mean, he sits in that role that Kevin Mayer plays in as well, and he's a very mature, very good footballer, and I think he's going to be one for the future.
Yeah, Jack's, you know, he's a phenomenal player, and there's been a lot of scouts at our games this season. When we were struggling earlier on in the season, he was a standout performer, and for a young lad, he took that on his shoulders, and you know, he's progressing very nicely, and we're really pleased with Jack. He's played a lot of games this season.
Luke is still developing. I think he's a player that can come on in the game and make a big difference to a game, as he has proven time and time again.
He's got tremendous ability, the kid. He knocks on my door day in, day out. You know, wants to play. That's the key. He wants to play, and he gets frustrated. I get frustrated with him sometimes, but you can see the potential that the lad's got. Hasn't started as many games as he'd like, I'm sure. But again, he's got to realise he's still a young player, and we're nurturing him through. He'll get his opportunity, but he's got fantastic ability.
Shouldn't forget the fans at all, Paul, and the kind of role that they've played this season.
Yeah, I think home and away, our fans, year in, year out, for 16 years I've been here, the fans have been one of the reasons that I've stayed. And, you know, they deserve success, really, because they've stuck in there through some difficult times and some good times.
All in all, it's been an incredible season, especially when you consider back to November when you were knocked out of the Cup by Dover and you lost 3 home games in a row. It must have seemed that the possibility of promotion and playoffs was a long way away then. It's a tribute to everybody here that it's managed to be turned round.
Yeah, I think so, and that's what it is. Like you just said, everybody, and that's what it's about. It's about a club that's together, and it always has been, and it always will be. And the way you bring success is to be together. You know, we was all very down after the Dover game in the FA Cup. It was tough. It was a tough place to be at. Tough place to be at work for everybody. You know, and I've got to say, you've got to give the chairman a lot of credit because, you know, this season's been there's been a lot of knee-jerk reactions from chairman. A lot of managers go in losing, you know, obviously losing their jobs because it's about success, and you know, sometimes you need that bit of consistency, continuity within the club, and he stuck by me, you know. So credit to the chairman because he could have easily have moved me on like a lot of managers have done this season, had to move on, and I think you know, we're repaying him a little bit now. Me as a manager, my coaching staff, and the players, and you know, we want to do well for him, we want to do well for the fans, and you know, so credit to the chairman.
How overall, Paul, do you assess this season for Gillingham?
I think when you start off and look at the start we had, I think you have to say this has been a very successful season given the start we had. I think if we'd had the start, if we started the way we finished, we'd have won the championship. No question about that. But there we are. I mean, you can't change what's happened. We can only look forward, and we will look back at this season as a success, even if we haven't managed to achieve a promotion to League One.
After the start with just 15 points from 16 games, what the players achieved this season has been nothing short of amazing. They missed out this time, but the Gills will surely be among the promotion favourites next season.